Hello friends, so today we are moving into yet another new chapter, and for your information the last chapter was morphology in flowering plants and this chapter is structural organization in animals. So in between there was one chapter, right, chapter 6, and what was that chapter? That chapter was anatomy of flowering plants, but you will be happy to hear that this chapter is not included. Which one? Chapter 6, anatomy of flowering plants is not included for your this academic year. So we are moving into the next chapter, chapter 7, structural organization in animals, right? So that is what the chapter 7. Now when you are moving into this chapter, here also the whole chapter is not included in your syllabus. You are only having a part of the chapter, okay? So which one is excluded? Here you are going to learn only about animal tissues, the different tissues which are present in animals. So animal tissues we will be dealing, but we will not be learning the anatomy, the morphology of the animal. Cockroach, frog and all will be there in your text, but that we are not going to deal because that is not there for your syllabus. So we are going to learn only the animal tissues. So moving into the chapter, the name of the chapter is structural organization and animals. How the organization, what are the different structures that are present in the organization of animals, that's what we are going to discuss in this chapter, right? So let's go into the chapter without delay. Here we go. Animal tissue, right? So when you are classifying these animal tissue, you can classify them into 4 major categories. So what are the 4 major categories? The first category is epithelial tissue. The second category is your, 1 minute, let me take it pen, yeah, fine. So the first category is what? Epithelial tissue. The second category is connective tissue. The third one is the muscular tissue, and the fourth one is the neural tissue. Epithelial tissue, what do you mean by epithelial tissue? It is present on the outer or the inner covering, okay? So it's a covering layer of tissues which are present, which we call it as what? The epithelial tissue. Next is your connective tissue. As the name suggests, these are the tissues, these are the cells which are helping in connecting one part of a body with that of the other, right? Next is your muscular tissue. Muscular tissue refers to the muscles which are helping in various activities, whether it is voluntary or involuntary. Activities are being carried out with the help of this tissue called as what? The muscular tissue. And the last one is your neural tissue. So neural tissue refers to the nervous, okay? So nerve tissue, and this is the main important tissue which is controlling the rest of the tissues. As you know, they are only responsible for sending messages from one part of our body to another, right? So animal tissues are classified into 4 categories. What are they? First is epithelial tissue, second is connective tissue, third is muscular tissue, and the fourth one is neural tissue. Today we will be discussing about 2 tissues. What are the 2 tissues what we are going to discuss today? One big and one small, right? So neural tissue is smaller one, epithelial tissue is the bigger one. In the next class we will be discussing again one big and one small. Smaller one will be muscular and the bigger one will be connective, right? So today we are going to discuss 2 topics, that is in animal tissue we are going to discuss neural tissue and epithelial tissue. Ready? Neural tissue. So nervous tissues we call it as what? The neural tissue. Now when you are seeing this nervous tissue, you would have already learnt about the neuron, isn't it? Nervous tissue consists of a cluster of cells called as neuron. Along with that you can find the cells that are associated with this neuron cells, we call it as neuroglial cells. What do we call them? Neuroglial cells. So when you look into the structure will be like this. You can find this is the neuron, right? And you can find the cells over present over here. So major composition, when you are seeing they are beings, the neurons are surrounded by a type of cells called as what? Neuroglial cells. So all together we group them under neural tissue, right? So neurons are the unit of nervous system which are excitable, means they are only the one who is receiving our stimulus and carrying the stimulus from different parts of our body, and they are only responsible for our responses. Okay, so that is neurons. Neuroglial cells constitute the rest of the neural tissue, and what is the function of this neuroglial cells? They are protecting and supporting the neuron. So this is the main neuron, and this cells, the neuroglial cells which are surrounding them, is protecting. Okay, as that is the main function of what? Nourishing and protecting, giving support to the neuron, right? Neuroglia make up more than 1/2 of the volume of neural tissue. So 1/2 of the volume when you are seeing is being composed of what? This neuroglial cell. Now we will be discussing regarding the structure of a neuron. Okay, so what is a neuron? You know, nerve cell. So neuron, when you are saying what will be the structure of a neuron, we will discuss in detail. But like for example, if what is the function of this neuron cells? When you are seeing some flies or something is nearing to my eyes, first the neurons are present in all the sense organs. Eye is also part of sense organs. Now when you are seeing in the eye the neurons which are present in the eye will get excited on seeing that something is nearing me. Immediately the neuron will carry the message to the brain, something is nearing me, right? So the nerve cells are carrying the message to the brain. So what is the stimulus? The sight is the stimulus there. I am seeing the fly which is nearing me, so that is my stimulus, and immediately the message will be carried by the neurons present in the eye to the brain. What the brain will do? The brain will detect what has to be done, what response has to be done, and another set of neuron called as motor neuron will give the signal what is to be done to the eyes, and immediately what I will do? I will close my eyes. So receiving the stimulus and carrying out the response is controlled by a set of cells called as what? The neurons. Okay, so they are receiving and they are carrying out the response. The one which is receiving, we call it as sensory neuron. What do we call them? Sensory, because they are sensing, taking, receiving the stimulus. And one which is present in the brain, we call it as association. What is association? They are taking the signal from the sensory and they are telling the motor neuron to do what has to be done. So response is carried out by whom? The effector, the part which is carrying out the response. Who is carrying the message? Motor. So neurons are of how many types? 3 types. One is sensory, which is detecting the stimulus, carrying it to the brain message. Brain, in their brain or spinal cord, what neuron is present? Association. They will receive the stimulus and they will give a response. The response, what has to be done, is carried by whom? Motor neuron. Okay. So you have how many? 3. Sensory neuron carries the stimulus to the brain. In the brain you are having association neuron which says motor neuron to do what has to be done. Like that you are having 3 sets of neurons: sensory, association and motor neuron. Now moving on to the structure of this neuron. So hope the function is clear. The nervous system, whether it is touch, whether it is pain, whether it is smell, whether it is sound, everything is controlled by these nerves. Okay. So you have to get up, you have to sit down, you have to respond. Everything is controlled by whom? The nerves, the nervous system. They are working in coordination with these 3 sets of neurons: sensory, association and motor neurons. Now when you are moving on to the structure of the neuron will be looking like this. In your smaller class you would have learnt the main part of the neuron is where the nucleus is present. We call it as the cell body or the cyton. What do we call them? Cell body of the cyton. There are many branches coming out from the neuron. These branches, when you are seeing, one of the branch will go vertically long. That vertically growing long branch is called as axon. What do we call them? We call them as axon. Thereafter many branches will be there, but not vertically growing, small branches. Dendrons. What do we call them? Dendrons. Collectively dendrites. One dendron, many dendrites. Okay. So one which is growing vertically long, we call it as axon, and the other ones we call it as what? We call them as dendron, singular, collectively dendrites, right. So, you would have seen this picture will become more clear. So, this one is the cell body or the cytone, the main part of the neuron. Inside that only you can find what? The nucleus is present, right. Then you can find many branches coming out from the neurons. These branches, okay, are called as dendrites. What do we call them? Dendrites. And one of the branches going vertically long, this branch we call it as what? The axon. In the axon you can find there is a covering. So, this is an axon, means there is a covering, like this one covering is present, right, you can find, right, one covering is there. So, that covering we call it as myelin sheath. What do we call them? Myelin sheath. Inside that there is fat deposits. What is present? Fat deposit. So, that when they are carrying some messages, the messages from the axon should not go sidewise. If it is going sidewise, the message is transmitted, then it will not go to the brain, right. So, in order to act as insulator, not allowing things to move out other than that area. So, there is a covering present. We call it as what? We call them as myelin sheath, right. So, axon is covered by a sheath called as what? Myelin sheath, which acts as insulator. This myelin sheath is not continuous. In between you can find gaps present. These gaps we call it as what? Nodes of Ranvier. From these nodes of Ranvier, in some neurons you can find branches projecting out, helping in sidewise conduction, okay. So, nodes of Ranvier, and at the end you can find the axon is branching into knob-like structures, okay. So, the axon endings, what do we call them? We call them as the axon ending, and the tip of the axon ending we call it as the synaptic knob, okay. So, if you want to see the structure, how the structure will be, so this is cytone, this is axon, this is dendrites, right, and axon at the end it is giving rise to what? Axon endings. Axon ending at the base will have what? The synaptic knob. What is the role of the synaptic knob? How it is acting as neurotransmitter? All these things you will be learning in your chapter nervous system. As of now you just know the structure of neuron, right. So, the neuron consists of this structure. Hope it is clear. When you are explaining the structure of neuron, it is very important. 2 mark question. Along with the diagram, if it is asked, it becomes 3 mark. So, you are having cytone, dendrites, axon, myelin sheath, axon endings and synaptic knob, okay. So, this is regarding your nervous system. The main nervous system, the cells, is the neuron, which is helping in conducting messages from one place to another, receiving stimulus and giving responses, right. Now, we are moving on to the next tissue. What is the next tissue? Epithelial tissue. So, epithelial tissue I have already told you, they are present on the covering layers, whether it is an outer covering or it is an inner covering. Like outer covering of my body, when you are seeing the skin, it is epithelial tissue. Inner covering means in the stomach, when you are saying this is my stomach, if you see the inner side of the stomach is having what? Epithelial tissue, which is secreting some juices, digestive juices, which is helping in digestion. That is also what? Epithelial tissue. So, epithelial tissues are covering tissues, right. This epithelial tissue can be divided into 2 types. What are the 2 types? One is the simple epithelium and another one is the stratified epithelium or compound epithelium. What is the difference? Simple means only one layer of cells. If there is presence of only one layer of cell, simple. If you can find the cells same like that of simple only, but many layers are there in cluster, then we call it as what? The compound stratified epithelium, right. So, this stratified epithelium is multi-layered and simple epithelium is single layer. Like for example, simple epithelium, when you are seeing like this, the cell is present, then it is simple. When like this, the cells are present, but in many layers, like this, many layers of cells are present together, then it becomes what? Stratified. Stratus, layers of cells are present. So, it becomes compound or stratified. Now, the simple epithelium is again of 3 types. What is that? Squamous epithelium, cuboidal epithelium and columnar epithelium. Like the same, squamous if it is present in layers, stratified squamous. If it is present, cuboidal is present in layers, stratified cuboidal. If the columnar cells are present in many layers, then it becomes stratified columnar. Okay. So, the same simple tissue as well as the compound tissues are of three main types. What are they? Squamous, cuboidal and columnar. Clear? Now, you can see the diagram of the same. The first one is your squamous epithelium. So, A is what? The squamous epithelium. It's somewhat flat, irregular shaped cells. Okay. Just like this, you can find irregular many cells, flat like this the cells will be present. So, then we call them as what? We call them as squamous epithelium. When the cell is having a cube-like structure, right, it becomes what? Cuboidal. What is the structure? Cuboidal cells. Okay. Cuboidal epithelium. Now, when the cells is like columns, cylindrical column-like structure. So, this is cylindrical column-like structure. Then it becomes columnar epithelium. What does it become? Columnar epithelium. And in this columnar, imagine if the cilia is present. What is present? Cilia. Cilia, you know, hair-like structure if it is present. Then it becomes ciliated columnar epithelium. What does it become? Ciliated columnar epithelium. So, what is the three main types? Squamous, flat, irregular shaped cells, squamous. Cuboidal, cube-like. Columnar, column-like or cylindrical, right. Now, moving on to one by one in detail, we will be learning, right. So, first one what we are going to learn, squamous epithelium. You can see this is squamous epithelium. Under microscope, if you are viewing, you can find cells like this. The squamous epithelium is made up of a single thin layer of flattened cells. So, flattened single layer of cells, simple squamous epithelium with irregular boundaries. Boundaries are not regular, isn't it? Some are big, you can find some are small, like that. The boundaries are not at all similar. Where it is found, location. So, whenever you are learning, first you learn the name, location, okay, where it is present. First you learn the structure, how does it look like. Second, you learn where it is present. Third, you learn what is its function. So, whenever you are writing any epithelium, if short note, first you have to explain the structure. Second, you have to draw the diagram when you are explaining structure. Second, you have to learn what? You have to learn the location, where it is present. Third, you have to learn the function, right. So, whatever epithelium you are going to learn, categorize like this so that it becomes easy, right. Yeah. Now, they are found in the walls of blood vessels. So, arteries, veins, capillaries, blood vessels are there. On the walls of these blood vessels, you can find the simple epithelium is present, as well as in the air sacs of lungs. You have learned lungs, isn't it? So, in the lungs, you are having air sacs, yes or no? Trachea divides to what? I will most probably you know air sacs what it is. So, you have trachea divides it into what? Bronchi, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, then you have air sacs. So, in the lungs what is present? Many air sacs are present where it is exchange of gases is taking place, like carbon dioxide and oxygen exchange is taking place. So, in these walls also you can find what? The simple epithelium is present, squamous epithelium, okay. They are involved in functions like diffusion. So, mainly they are helping in diffusion of gases, diffusion of blood, oxygenated blood, deoxygenated blood from one part of the body to another part for diffusing from one region to another. These are playing a major role, that is simple squamous epithelium, okay. The next one is cuboidal epithelium, cube-like structures, okay. Single layer of cube-like cells. Where it is found? It is found in the ducts of glands. And ducts of glands means what? You have thyroid gland, you have pituitary gland, you have pancreas, a gland, isn't it? So, these are all what? The glands. So, in the glands you can find, as well as you can find nephrons in kidney. In the kidney you have learned there is a structure called as what? The kidney are made up of cells called as nephrons, which helps in filtration of blood, formation of urine, isn't it? So, in that nephron also you can find what? The this cuboidal epithelium is present. So, structure when you are learning of the kidney, you would have learned Bowman's capsule, right. Thereafter, you would have learned proximal convoluted tubule, distal convoluted tubule, Henle's loop and all. So, then this tube-like structure only, which one is present? This cuboidal epithelium is present, okay. So, this is regarding your nephrons in the kidney. You can find this cuboidal epithelium. Function is what? They are helping in secreting something, some enzymes, or some ions they are secreting, as well as they are helping in absorption of some substances they are helping in. So this is the function of what? This cuboidal epithelium. Okay. So the epithelial proximal convoluted tubule of nephron in the villi has many microvilli. So in this you can find this epithelial cell of PCT. PCT means what? Proximal convoluted tubule. So what is proximal convoluted tubule? I told you. So when you are seeing the nephron, the first one is what? The Bowman's capsule. Okay. And thereafter you find proximal convoluted tubule. Then you have Henle's lobe, then you have what? The distal convoluted tubule. So here there are many microvilli. Villi means what? Single projections where these, which one is present? This epithelium, the epithelium is made up of what? This cuboidal epithelium, and they help in absorption. Okay, if water, any ions, good things are present in the urine which is going to go out, from there they will absorb all the good things and keep it for ourselves. Okay, in our body they will be maintaining it. So that is the function of what? This cuboidal epithelium. So where is the location? One is in the glands you can find, second in the nephrons you can find, especially in the proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, fine. So this is regarding your cuboidal epithelium. Now moving on to columnar epithelium. It is composed of a single layer of tall slender cells. So this one is what? The columnar epithelium. When you are seeing these tall slender cells, mostly the nuclei will be present at the base. Base means what? Somewhat below, right? Free surfaces have microvilli. Microvilli, hair-like structures will be present, and where it is present? They are present in the stomach and intestine. What is the function of this columnar epithelium? Again, secretion and absorption. Okay, so this is regarding what? The columnar epithelium. Where it is present? Stomach and intestine. So since it is present there, the digestion mainly, so they are helping in absorption, as well as to some extent they are also helping in secreting some enzymes. Okay, so this is regarding what? Your columnar epithelium. Moving on to the next one is your columnar epithelium and the cuboidal epithelium. If they are having cilia, in the beginning itself I told you, hair-like projections, if it is present, then we call them as what? Ciliated columnar, ciliated cuboidal. Okay, so what is the function of the cilia? See, cilia, respiratory tract in the fallopian tubules in case of female, thereafter in the urinary tract and all, you can find the ciliated cells are present. What is the function of the cilia? Is that cilia is helping in batting. Batting means what? They will be moving in one direction only. Okay, so if at all, like for example, our respiratory tract, okay, when you are saying that bronchioles as well as our respiratory tract, they are having what? Cilia. The cilia will be moving like this. If at all any dust comes in between, what will happen? The dust will be pushed out. Okay, why it is beating like this, isn't it? So what happens when a ball is coming to this bat? What will happen to the ball? The ball will be hit to the opposite side, isn't it? So what is the function of cilia? Is that they are moving in particular direction so that they are not allowing the substances to go into the direction which it should do not go. Dust if is going into the lungs, it is dangerous. So the cilia, what they do is that in the bronchioles and all, they will be present, and they helps in batting and making the things out to move out of that place. Okay, so that is the function of what? The ciliated epithelium. To mew particles or mucus. Mucus means what? Slimy secretions. Okay. So somewhat slimy, sticky secretions and all, to just take it out. So in the morning when you are cleaning your nose, with that all the dust as well as this mucus and all will be coming out. All these dust and all is being trapped by these cilia, and it is pushed out through the nostril. It comes out when you are forcing it out. Okay, so that is the main function of what? This ciliated epithelium. So inner surface of organs like bronchioles, fallopian tubules. In case of females, when you are seeing in the fallopian tubules also, these ciliated epithelium, cilia like structures you can find, isn't it? They are present, right? Only the location you need to know. Now glandular epithelium, special glands are present. So this is a special type of epithelium. Wherever glands are present, wherever some secretions are needed, cuboidal or columnar, they have glands within them. Then we call them as what? Glandular epithelium. Cuboidal or columnar having glands. Okay, So these glands, when you can see, are of two types. One is unicellular gland and another one is multicellular gland. Unicellular gland, where it is present in the cells, goblet cells is the name of the cells, which are specially present where in the alimentary canal. Okay. So they are glandular cells which are unicellular in nature, means only one within a cell, one gland you can find. Okay. Another one is your multicellular glandular epithelium, where in the salivary gland you can find in one cell you can find many glands are present. Okay. So multicellular, you can find many cells having many glands are present. So then we call them as what? Multicellular glandular epithelium. So unicellular consisting of isolated glandular cells, only one cells, one glands. Okay, multicellular, innumerable number of cells with innumerable number of glands. That is regarding the glandular epithelium. Now moving on to the next is your glands can be of two types. Okay, that is based on the number of cells, unicellular, multicellular. Based on the function, it can be of two types. One is your exocrine gland and another one is your endocrine gland. Okay. Exocrine glands are glands which are producing enzymes. What they are producing? Usually they produce enzymes. They have duct. Duct means what? A place where they can store something. Okay, duct-like structures. Endocrine glands are producing hormones. What they are producing? They are producing hormones and they do not have duct. Okay. So what is the difference? Very important question. Exocrine and endocrine gland. Like endocrine gland, you would have learnt pituitary gland is an endocrine gland, thyroid gland is an endocrine gland. You have learned, isn't it? Pancreas is both endocrine and exocrine because it is producing hormone like insulin as well as it is producing pancreatic juice enzymes. Okay, so that is a different thing. Other than that, thymus gland, when you are saying adrenal gland. Okay, so these glands are endocrine. They produce what? They produce hormones. They don't have ducts. What they do not have? Ducts. A storage like structure is not present in them. They cannot store their secretion. Like when the sugar level goes up, immediately the pancreas will produce what? Insulin, and they will pour it into the blood and they will try to reduce the sugar level. So it is not stored somewhere. When needed, it is produced and it is being put into the blood and they will function. Like thyroid gland, it is controlling our metabolic rate. If the metabolic rate goes higher, what will happen? Thyroxine will be secreted immediately. They will go and act. Function is over. Like testes, ovaries, they are also producing hormones, right? They are also endocrine glands. So whenever the sexual stimulus is gained, you can find they become activated. They are put out, thereafter its function is over, it's over. They cannot store it anywhere. Okay. So that sort of glands we call it as what? Endocrine glands without ducts, and their secretions are usually hormones. Exocrine means what? The opposite. They have duct. Like for example, pancreas. Okay. Pancreatic duct is present. They are secreting pancreatic juice. Pancreas storing pancreatic juice. Whenever needed, they will be pouring it. Okay. Like that only. Liver, when you are seeing, in that bile juice is secreted, stored in that, afterwards it will be put. Like that you can find exocrine gland is present in salivary gland is an exocrine gland. Saliva is secreted, stored. Whenever needed, it is put. Okay. So immediately secreting, no, can be stored. Whenever you need it, you can use it from the stored thing. So they are released usually through the ducts or the tubes where it is being stored. From there it is being. So if the ducts are present, we call it as exocrine. If the ducts are absent, we call it as endocrine. Okay. So this is regarding the two difference between what? Exocrine and endocrine glands. Now moving on to compound epithelium, I told you stratified, many layers are present, more than one layer, so that's we call it as what? The multi-layered cells, and thus have a limited role. So that's why they cannot secrete, absorb and all difficult, because one layer is present, secretion is okay, absorption is okay. Many layers means it becomes difficult. So mostly their function is protection. So skin, it is made up of stratified epithelium, squamous epithelium. Many layers should be there, so that if someone is hitting me or some injury is there, immediately if only one layer is there, blood will come out fast, isn't it? So if many layers are there, then what will happen? It acts as a protective layer so that it's not getting affected much. The inner part is not getting affected much. The stress is not much on the inner part. Okay. So any chemicals, if only one layer skin is present, just imagine, then what will happen? Some perfume, if I am putting one layer inside, it will directly go and affect, and what sort of cancer will come to me, isn't it? So many layers of skin, what they are doing is that they are acting as protective barriers, so that they have to cross all these things. There my white blood cells, my secretions and all will react with these and try to neutralize the harmful effect, so that protection. So protection is the main role of what? This stratified compound epithelium. So they cover the dry surface of our skin, buccal cavity. Okay, here you can find pharynx, this part, inner lining of the duct of salivary gland, bacteriatic duct there, and all they are present. Okay, and what is the function of these? When many layers are present, they are helping in protecting those regions from direct exposure, like that we can say. Okay, now moving on to the last part of this epithelial tissue. These epithelial tissues, when you are seeing, one cell is connected with that of the other cells. In between you can find to have communication with, as well as not to have communication with one cell to another, there are some junctions present. Okay, so like you have junctions in the roads, isn't it? So like that in the cells also, while communicating with one another, they have some limitation, they have some possibilities. So this one we call it as what? The cell junctions. There are three types of cell junction. Excuse me. Yeah. The first one is your tight junction, the second one is your adhering junction, and the third one is your gap junction. So what is the difference between these three? Tight junction. So they are helping in stopping substances from leaking from one cell to another. So substances should not leak. So this is tight junction. Okay. So they are keeping it tightly so that the substances from here should not leak where? Into that part. Just like that they cannot go. So only one I have is been shown in the diagram. You can find many places there are tight junction. So easily substances from one cell cannot go into the another. Okay. So that is tight junction. The next junction is your adhering junction. What is the next junction? Adhering. What is adhering junction? Adhering means one cell is attached with that of the other cells with the help of a cementing material. Like one brick with the other, in between there is a cement keeping it intact. So that junction we call it as what? The adhering junction. Thereafter you can find gap junction. What is gap junction? Gap junction, the black part you can see, isn't it? It is a connection between one cell to another. So anything from this cells has to go into this cell through the gap junctions. What can do? The substances, bigger or smaller substances, can move from one cell to another through the gaps. Okay. So tight junction is keeping the cells intact. Adhering also the same, like cementing, they are keeping it intact. Tight junction, they are not allowing substances to move in easily, pass easily, but at all. Sometimes substances need to pass from one place to another. Through that they can pass with the help of the gap junction, right? So tight junction helps to stop substances from leaking. Adhering junctions perform cementing to keep neighboring cells together, otherwise the cells will move like anything, like jellyfish, right? Gap junction facilitates the cells to communicate with each other by connecting the cytoplasm of a adjoining cell. For rapid transfer of ions can be transferred from one cell to another. Molecules, bigger molecules can be transferred from one cell to another with the help of what junction? Gap junction, because the cytoplasm of one cell is in connection with the cytoplasm of the another cell with the help of a connecting bridge called as what? The gap junction. With this we are coming to the end of today's class. So in this we discussed in detail about nervous tissue and epithelial tissue. In the next class we will be discussing about connective tissue, right? So hope it's clear. Thank you.